Hello everybody, it is Sunday the 3rd of July. I want to talk again and again. I'm going around in circles but coming to more defined understandings of what it is I'm talking about. And it is a bit like, I don't know if you've seen the film Once Upon a Time in the West, where during the film you see a man going through the desert and it is just a silhouette in the back. But this scene comes up again and again, and every time the man becomes more defined until you see in the end who the character actually was. And it is a bit like that for me. You know, I'm going around in circles and it becomes more defined every time. So again, talking about Satan and Lucifer and coming to the conclusion that they are actually emotional archetypes, not egoic. So we have the archetypes like defined by Carl Jung, which were egoic archetypes, and we have not looked at the emotional side, which is the other side of us. And it has got its own archetypes, and that is what Satan and Lucifer are. They are emotional archetypes. Satan being fear, and Lucifer being compassion. Now, I was thinking about making this into 2 videos, but I think it's better if I just go in one video from one to the conclusion, to the next, to the conclusion, which will make it a bit longer, but just bear with me. So I start with fear. And people don't like fear, and they say, you should overcome fear. That's wrong. People also look at nature with fear, yeah? And they are looking at what is happening in nature. For instance, if animals get hunted and stuff like that, and they say it's cruel. And they are projecting their own feelings onto the animal, which is not what is happening. Because the animals are operating, for the most part, under the archetype. Whereas most of what we experience as fear is actually created by the ego. Or dare I say it, by your beautiful imagination. The archetype of fear, Satan, is when the ego is actually no longer there, or at a bare minimum. There is no more thoughts, but you are being taken over by the emotion. Yeah, and you are reacting no longer under rational thought, but you're being swept away and you are intuitively reacting according to the emotion. And then you've reached the archetype of fear, Satan. And that is the moment where fear will give you strength. That is where the archetype becomes your servant. And most animals are operating on the archetype. And that's this fear that we know as fear that is produced by our imagination. And that makes things endlessly worse. That fear is actually not there. They are operating on an emotion, purely that. And I said, at that moment it becomes your servant. It gives you strength. Now, if you understand this, and then you see what happened with that knowledge and how it was used, and how it has the understanding of this, and there are people that have the understanding of this archetype, that using it to create this world. Yeah? And now I'm not pointing the finger of blame when I'm talking about Joshua, because it was Joshua that made this knowledge Lord. Yeah? There was a realization of what was happening, and he made it Lord, and he would operate under fear because it would give him strength. That was a conscious decision that Joshua made. As I said, I'm not pointing the finger of blame because it is completely pointless. Joshua is long gone. He is quite literally history. But we are here to learn from history. Yeah? So the understanding of what Joshua did, he understood that. He saw the archetype and what it worked. And Satan, as the fear, as the archetype, is actually a bringer of light. Because it preserves life, it gives to life, it gives you strength. It is obviously designed to be used in situations of clear and present danger, sudden danger, where you have stumbled into a situation there is no other way out, where fear will sweep in and give you strength. But you should not seek that place. You should not create that place to receive of fear. It is created for a specific situation, and it should only be used in that situation, when it occurs naturally, not when you have created it. But, as I said, Joshua made this Lord, made this knowledge Lord. And for a long time, the Jewish people operated under that understanding, had this as Lord, did accordingly. Most of them probably didn't understand what was happening, but those who did, yeah. And now I lost my trail. Yeah. And if you do the same thing over and over again, you will create the same outcome. And another thing is that if you try to walk a straight line, when all weight is on just one side of you, you will walk around in a circle. All the strength is just on one side, in one leg. Then you walk in a circle, and that's what we've been doing. We've been operating under fear. So, in comes Jesus, and he brings the knowledge of another emotion, another archetype, which somebody saw fit to give the label of Lucifer. Well, we've got the labels, we might as well use them, but it is compassion. So, and we are saying, he brought the knowledge, the Spirit made itself known, but we didn't know it. We didn't understand it. The church still doesn't understand it because all it sees is Jesus. It sees the person. It doesn't see what is speaking through him, which is an emotional archetype. Compassion. Compassion brought the knowledge of itself. Jesus was the sound box. So, and then what does compassion work? Again, it brings change. Now, fear brings short-lived temporary relief. Yeah? It gets you out of a situation. That's all it does. It's all it's designed to do. But it is short-lived. But if you go from situation to situation, you just keep plugging holes. And that is what we're doing at the moment. We're plugging holes. The whole dam is breaking and we're still under fear, plugging holes. which doesn't work. So compassion brings longer lasting changes. Yeah? They are not permanent, because you still have to sin no more afterwards. You know, if you do the same thing again, it will bring you back to the same place. But it brings a change that could be longer lasting if you then go on to the correct way. The other thing with compassion is that whereas fear is created by the situation, or should be created by the situation, you can call on compassion really at any time. Yeah? I mean, if, let's say, love your neighbor as yourself, if your neighbor is a complete arsehole, yeah? Depending on how you look at that, if you say nobody is born a natural asshole, but something happened to him on the way that brought him in, is he reacting out of fear? Is he reacting out of envy? Is he reacting, what is it that makes him such a contrary so-and-so that you can't get on with? So, and then you can look at it with compassion to say there's something he's lacking, and you could ask for him. He is hurting in some way, and you could ask for him. And compassion can be worked at any time. It is there all the time. It is knocking on the door. You can use it. You can turn to it. So, but, and here's a but, there's always a but. If you look at what Jesus did, yeah, and the way he felt this emotion, yeah, he felt compassion, he was moved by compassion, he was overcome by compassion, yeah. So there were different strengths of compassion, and here is actually, apart from understanding yourself, is actually the function of the ego, and that is to regulate how much of that energy should you let in. So when Jesus resurrected Lazarus and he was overcome by compassion, that is to say, it swept him away. There, the archetype was probably there in its fullness. Yeah, and it worked the resurrection. But then if you are thirsty, let's say you're dying of thirst, and you need water, yeah? Do you then visualize water, and you think, water, 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 until you have created a flood? And then you have definitely too much of a good thing. So then too much of a good thing will kill you as surely as not enough or nothing. You die of thirst without it, but you'll drown if you have too much. Again, there is the place of the ego, wisdom. How much of it is like being the housekeeper with your own energies. How much do you allow? How much will serve you? Which energy would serve you best? And as I said, fear is really only the last solution. When you have stumbled blindly into a situation, and maybe even without any fault of your own, it will come to serve you. But you shouldn't seek it. And you sure as hell shouldn't make it Lord. And compassion, no, do not let it run away with you. Too much can be a bad thing. There needs to be reason. And that is the place of the ego. That is the function of the ego. Now, what happened, especially with Jesus, and this is something I want to show, and that is, whereas he brought the knowledge of compassion, and it was the Spirit that spoke through him, which is what the church really needs to see. It needs to look past the form, but see what it is that spoke through him. So whereas he had the knowledge of compassion and he was working it, yeah, he was working it in an interaction with the all. He's creating miracles. And he is using it in different amounts. Yeah, as in feeling it, being moved by it, being overcome by it. So there, although he said, do not judge. Do not judge to let the archetype in its fullness. And that is the same, I think, and there might be more archetypes than just those two, but it is the same with all of them. At the moment I will come to you, at the moment you think not. Which does not mean you do not know when it's coming. It means you are not thinking. It will come in its fullness when you are not thinking, when the ego has stepped aside and opened the floodgates. So Jesus understood all of that. But he still went the same way that the Jews have always gone. He made this Lord. And he still went the way of you must go through tribulation to get to that point. With fear, obviously, you need to create tribulation to get yourself into that state of fear. But Jesus is still on the way of you need to go through tribulation. You need to wear the ego down. You need to, bring the ego to complete exhaustion so that it will step out of the way or drop dead, finally, to let this emotional archetype through in its fullness and then be ruled over by it. He's doing the same thing again, just with a different emotion. Joshua did it with fear, he is doing it with compassion. And it is not the way. And it is not the idea that the ego does need to step out of the way somehow. Yeah? The thought needs to calm down for it to come through. But it needs to know what it is doing. Yeah? It is reason. And reason it needs to be there as much as the emotional energy. So no, it's not go through tribulation until you have the ego dead in a corner. So that whatever can sweep in and take you over and rule over you. That is not how it should be. You are in charge. You must know your two sides, the rational side, the emotional side. You can know, the ego can know itself in Carl Jung's ego archetypes. Yeah? So understand itself. But it must also understand the emotional archetypes and know that somehow our two sides need to cooperate with one another. It's not one ruling over the other, or kill one and then let the other rule. There needs to be cooperation, and balance is achieved through what the need actually is at that moment. It is the need itself that determines what the balance should be. So there is an understanding of ourselves. And now coming to what is happening at the moment, because as I say, we're going two ways. At the moment we're splitting in two ways, and they're neither of them good. They're neither of them good. One way is we are going the way of Jesus, that is to say we shove the ego out of the way. It's what everybody's talking about. Kill the ego, let in this emotional archetype. The light bringer will come and rule over you. which is not its function. He said himself, I am a part. I was a part, and I became the whole. I will become everything. No, you were created a part, and that's what you are. And you're that for a reason. Because if you're all, you're a complete lunatic. So, that's first. So know the archetypes, know that, to what amount you should let them in. Don't open the floodgates. But at the moment, as I said, that is the one way we can go. Open the floodgates, kill the ego, open the floodgates. Or the other way is, and that's what's happening at the moment, is that the ego is detaching itself from its emotional archetypes and saying, you know what, I'm doing it my way. I deny my lower nature. I am the light, and I will create for myself, which is expressing itself in technology, in creating a new body that is ruled over by technology, which is just as lunatic as the other. Again, we are splitting into two ways. Either just the ego or just the emotion, and then kill the fear. The emotions are doing battle against each other. Kill the fear and let compassion rule. Which, as I said, a flood will kill you just as surely as if you have no water at all. So, either way will lead to destruction, because it does not take into account ourselves in our fullness. We are both. We need to operate both. We need to create balance between the two. Ego creates balance by, to the amount it is there, blocking the emotion. How much of it is needed. And in order to let it more in, the ego needs to step out of the way and leave the gap for the emotion to go through. But I said it needs to be wise. Anyway, I think I will leave it at that. That is how we should look at this. Yeah? To understand how we are functioning. Not to kill a part of ourselves, but understand in what place it should function and to what amount. It's not, they're all good. They all can do good. They are created by the light, they are light. You just need to use them correctly. Right, I leave it at that. And listen, if you think that this is a way of looking at this that would be useful at this moment in time, then please share my videos. And I am still plugging holes, so I do have a PayPal thing at the top of my channel. So if you can, please donate, because I am sitting here plugging holes like the rest of the world. Anyway, I leave it at that, and talk to you again. Bye.